Hello everyone, it is Christine here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can use old highlighters. These are highlighters that I've probably had since school time or university studies, which is a very long time ago, and they're quite old. Even the plastic's quite fragile. Sometimes they've dried out around the bottom of them, and so I was going through an entire box of them. I have quite a quantity of them. This is probably only about half of what I had, and I was thinking, what can I do with them? So I had a bit of a Google and I found a great YouTube tutorial, which I'll link to, where they were dyeing wool and then dyeing yarns using an extraction method, which I'll show you today. But I've also had a play with pre-treating and then just drawing directly on the pieces, and I've also had a play with using a syringe to add different colors to the pieces as well, as part of a sort of a hybrid method. So I'll show you those three methods today. I'll show you how I pre-treat using water and vinegar, and then I've done an experiment overnight with some immersed in it, which I'll show you how they look when we take them out. So what you will need if you want to have a play along is go through your old boxes of stationery, or if you've got them, or a tin or something. See if you've got some old highlighters. I wouldn't suggest buying new highlighters to do this. This is really a repurposing and recycling project, and there's a plane going overhead. And so yeah, have a look what you've got to use. I think if you're wanting to dye and buy things new, you'd probably buy dyes that are purposeful made for dyeing yarns and fabric. So this is definitely a recycle repurposing project, because I don't like to suggest people get plastics and then put more plastics into the environment. But first of all, let me show you the effects of the ones that I did yesterday. So I used two methods, one where I was using the syringe to add colours to them, and they were quite wet when I did them. I've subsequently been drying them off a bit before I add the colour, so it'll be interesting today to see how that changes the effects. But let's show you some. So this was one where I added colour with the syringe, and it's come out and it's that pinky colour over there, but I think I added yellow as well, so it's created this fabulous orange colour. Got this one yellow, and I think with this one I had actually drawn on, because I can see some of the bits are darker yellow than the others, or sort of brighter I guess, but more intense. So that's where you're drawing directly onto the thread with the highlighter. This one I added the colour with the syringe to the wet wool, and this is a different wool from the other one. So even just looking at the variation you get depending on the wools you use. This is yet another wool, and again that was fully covered with the dye with the syringe. This was one where I think I put the green, the blue and the pink, and you can see some slightly pinky tinges, and what it has done is fully, I guess, sort of softened down the colours overall. Because comparing like that green, comparing the green where it's directly drawn on with the highlighter, it's quite a different effect. I'm just going to have to keep tapping the camera to make sure it's focusing. And so this was just some wool bat, which I coloured up with the syringe. This was one where I drew multiple colours on with the highlighters directly onto and this is just like a crochet yarn. Interestingly, my off-white crochet yarn didn't take the effects as much. This was where I was adding it on the syringe colours onto the wet yarn, but possibly because I'd left too much moisture in it in the first place. So it'll be interesting to see. This is one where I drew on with the highlighters, but the yellow does tend to wash out a fair bit. It's not as doesn't have as strong as ability to adhere, particularly to the cotton crochet threads. This was where I added colour using the syringes, and I really love the bluey greens, and it did have yellow in it, but you can see the yellow as kind of, I think the yellow works well where you're adding it to the other colours actually. This was one where I drew on with the yellow highlighter, but you can see a lot of it has rinsed out. Again, this was the off-white crochet, which just doesn't seem to be holding it. Maybe it's got a coating on it. This is just some wool batting that I coloured with the pinky colour, and that's actually a pink and orange mixed together. This one you can see, and I think what I did was added oh, actually no, this one I drew on, so it's got the pinks and the oranges drawn, and you can see because it's more intense in in some parts of it than others. You can see where the drawing occurred. This was one where I put the syringe colours onto the wetter wool, so it's softer, but I just love it, the pinks into oranges and yellows. And then this one drew on, so yeah, definitely get much more striking effects with the drawing on, and sort of softer, more merged effects when you do the other method. And so what I did with all of my yarns is put them in a bath with hot water, and the video I watched said a splash of vinegar. So I put a decent amount of vinegar in, and what that helps is it helps the pigments or the inks from the highlighter to adhere to the yarns when you actually come to use it. And then for this method, what you need to do, and let me put my, actually I'll put these gloves on, is you need to extract the inners out of the highlighters to put in with some hot water as well to start to extract them, and you need to leave them for a decent amount of time. So these I've left overnight, and let me show you how to do it. Some of the highlighters are easier than others. Let me find one that says it is refillable. So I found the ones that say they're refillable tend to be a bit easier to take apart because they're actually made to take apart. Let me just show you on this one, but this is quite a tricky method and I don't necessarily recommend it. I think yeah, if you're not comfortable doing it, you can definitely do good things just with marking onto the highlighter. But I need to get a pair of pliers and take the lid off. Sometimes the lids don't come off as easily as that, or the ends of them really. And then this bit should actually just sort of flick up, but sometimes it just does not want to come, and it actually kind of cracks off, and you can see it leaves a little bit of plastic. So if you're not comfortable, and I must admit yesterday I sometimes pincered my hand a bit, and then you need to extract out your tube in the middle, and sometimes they want to come out and sometimes it's like they're firmly stuck within. And a bit of plastic just went flying off, so that's what you want to extract out, and then you'd be putting that into there. Now I won't do that right now because I don't want to sort of mess up the colouring. I'll just put that off to the side over there. With this method where you're taking out those inners, you'd be then putting in, you can see I put quite a quantum in there, and then just adding hot water over the top and letting that in a sense brew. And then once you've treated your threads with that hot water and vinegar mixture and given it a good chance to sit and infuse, then you can put your yarns in if you want to use the immersion method, which is the first one I'll show you the results of. So I've done the treatment with them yesterday afternoon, and then last night put them in, and I've left them overnight. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to grab some paper towel, and I'm going to squeeze them out and then squeeze them out and then give them a heat set. Is a lovely bobbly sort of yarn. So I was using wools, I was using crochet thread, I was using possibly mixed wool and synthetics, just what I had in my sort of bag of things. And I'm using gloves because I don't really want my fingers, one, to be coloured, but we just don't know what's in these sorts of things. So I want to be minimising the extent to which I am getting it on my hands, my skin. So I'm just going to squeeze all of them out and then give them a squeeze out in the wool here. Not in the wool, not the wool, Christine, in the paper towel. Got a bunch of them here. And I've got a perspex screen down here. It was actually a covering for a picture that I had got for my mum for Mother's Day. It's a beautiful owl painting from my local art group that was on display at the recent exhibition that I had my work in, and Mum and Dad absolutely loved it, so I picked it up for Mum for Mother's Day. And it had a perspex on the front of it, but it did have a few little sort of markings, I guess, from the wear and tear of moving around. So I've taken the perspex off, left it all framed and mounted, because I think it's much nicer to look at when it's not behind that sort of reflective surface. So I've got all my bits out of my yellow, and what I'm now going to do is give it an extra drying off. And again, I'll clean up my surface a bit. But yeah, the perspex that I took off the frame works wonderfully underneath this to keep the table safe underneath and not get it coloured up. So I'm doing all of this outside, I just don't want to create any problems inside. So immediately you can see that the yellow hasn't fully permeated the wool, so that's interesting. It's not as bright on this one either, but it's got pretty good colour, I think. This one, it's gone super bright, so that was a white crochet, this was another white crochet, super bright. And on this wool, it's sort of coated it seems semi unevenly. And then on this wool, again, it's sort of picked up in some places and less in others. So let me just again, and what we're then going to do is heat set these with the iron. Or something. So I've got my iron, I've got a board that I don't use for cooking, it's an old cutting board, and I've got some baking paper that I can reuse. I don't know how I managed to get the yellow through the gloves, but anyway, pop them down like that, and I'm going to give them a heat set with the iron. And so this will flatten them a bit because the ironing kind of, yeah, does have that flattening effect on them. And I've got a dog toy underfoot, so let me just get that out of the way. You can see they're pretty bright, even ironing through here. They're a pretty bright colour. And so the good thing about the baking paper is I'll be able to just wipe it down and reuse it. There is a method which is shown in the other video where you use a microwave that you don't use for cooking, which probably most of us don't have. We probably only have one microwave, and you put them in for 1.5 minutes wrapped in plastic that you've then put some holes in to ventilate, and that's how they heat set them in the video. But I just thought, yeah, probably don't want to suggest you use put threads with this sort of pigment on, which we don't know what happens when it gets heated and any of the fumes, and I wouldn't suggest putting them in a food environment. So anything you're using for this project, don't kind of then use it again for food. The one that I'm soaking my threads with the vinegar is obviously food safe, so that's okay for that water and vinegar dish to be used again. But I'll pop it through the dishwasher anyway in case it gets any little splashes of anything on it. So you can see that it's putting off some ink, and we will then be afterwards washing it with some water. I can probably show you one example of just washing it to show how much colour comes out, but I'd usually give it a full wash under running water after I've done the full heat setting process. I'll probably turn this over so we can fully heat set the other side as well. And then what I do afterwards is just hang them on the line on one of those little sort of, it's a little metal rack that has pegs on it, so I can hang a whole lot of things, and again put something underneath it so that if it drips down it's not going to stain your pavement or anything like that. Because the colour does it's definitely sort of a strong colour. And it's interestingly where some of the heat really sort of picks up, it's almost creating sort of transforming the colour a bit as well. So they're pretty hot now. I might just give them a tiny bit more because we do want to make sure that they have sort of set to the maximum degree. Make sure now our neighbour's doing the lawns. I guess that's the problem with videoing outside. You can't control the environment, but it's all part of being in a neighbourhood. So yeah, that's definitely almost taking on. I don't know if maybe the heat's too high on the iron. It's almost giving it a slightly oranginess to it, but it'll be interesting how it goes when we give it a wash out. So what I will do is pop on my same gloves again. Using a larger pair of gloves is helpful because you can get them on more easily and off than if you weren't. And then I'm going to put some water into this container here, and we'll just pop them in and see how they go when we give them a bit of a rinse. So put them in just with some water, and you can see a fair bit of the yellow does come out, which is interesting. So this one's now, and again you can see how the colour starts to change as well, where it keeps some of the colour. And I might just swing you up a bit higher on the stand, and then I'll adjust you again, just so you're higher up enough above where I'm working. So yeah, this one's taken on almost a sort of, it's still got that yellow, but it's taken on a more greeny sort of tone, I think you would say. I'll just put that down there for a seckie. This one, let's see how much more colour wants to come out. And obviously if you're running under the tap, some more colour even over and above that will come out, but I just wanted to kind of give you a bit of an idea. But yeah, the yellow is definitely the one that seems to not hold its colour as well as the others. I'll probably show you the pinky one up next, because I don't mind even changing some of that a little bit. If it picks up a bit of the yellow, I don't mind that. I think it's going to add an extra effect to it. And so yeah, squeezing it out. And so yeah, afterwards, after I've made this video, I'll give this a run under some running water as well. But just wanting to give you a bit of a feel here. And so this one, yeah, it's almost just slightly like those whites, the white crochet are really bright, and then this one's a softer colour. This one's almost a greeny sort of colour. It's really interesting, just the difference. Let me just put this to the side and just show you the different colours that we've got here. So yeah, play around. Different threads will give you different effects, all from the same sort of dye lot. I'll show you the pinky orange one. So again, I've just got myself some paper towel to use. I can bring this one over here. So I put quite a bit of the wool batting in because I thought that would be great for my coral reef project. And again, let me just give the... So I just accidentally, when I was tapping to focus, I managed to turn the camera off, but that's okay. We will continue along apace. So this is the wool batting, which I thought could be good for my coral reef project. So I've given that a squeeze back into the container and some onto my perspex surface. And then this is some of that squiggly wool. I think it's a wool, although it could be a wool synthetic mix. I think I got it at one of the purveyor, not the purveyor, the Embroiderers Guild de-stash markets. Give this a squeeze out as well. So you can see it sort of, yeah, it takes on different colours for sure. But I do love this mix of the pink and the orange together. It's a lovely colour. Need to, I've got my perspex right to the front of the table, and I've managed to get a little bit of pigment down there. What else have I got in here? I think this was one of my favourite colours from yesterday, so I put quite a bit in. And this one over here. Have we got in here? And as you can see, it leaves a fair bit. Like yesterday I did top up with a bit more hot water after I'd done my first lot of dyeing. No, that's part of the fibres. That's part of the fibres in the inner. So I think I've got all my bits of thread out. So again, let me just give my hands a bit of a drying, and I'll also grab a bit more of the toilet paper. There we go. I'll pop this back over here out of the way. I can put my other cylinder in there now, and again clean my bench, and then we can just give this a bit of a roll up to try and squeeze a bit more of the moisture out of it before we give it its iron. And you could definitely keep this paper towel and use it in like fabric, not fabric, paper collage sort of projects. It's got some good colour on it, doesn't it? There must be a hole in that glove piece. I've now got little bits of colour coming through, unless it's dripping through, I'm not sure. Just sort of spread them out a little bit so that you know you can get the iron all the way over them. And I do have it on its hottest, so I'm not sure. I think it's okay, because even those bits that looked a bit sort of scorched on the other one, I think that washed off when it did it, so maybe it's where the ink is thicker or something, and it's going to come off anyway. Probably just turn them over rather than having to turn the paper over. So again, you can see it's sort of getting that scorchy look, but maybe it's just where it's actually pressing the dye to the surface. But we'll see how it comes out when it washes. But again, you could play with different heat temperatures on your iron, but I think I just want to make sure it is fully heat set all the way through. And you can see not as much colour is coming out on the paper as it did with the other one. So it doesn't get fully dry at this stage. It's really that this is all about the heat setting, and because obviously it doesn't need to be fully dry because we're going to put it in water to give it the rinse. And yesterday I put a tiny bit of like a wool wash in when I was giving it the rinse as well, but today I think I'll just try rinsing with plain water. But I don't have running water out here accessible to where I'm filming, so yeah, I won't be doing the full final rinse today. But let's see what happens now. I'll pour this one out with the fluoro in it. Still got a little bit of fluoro water in it, but I'll just add some more water back into my tub, and then I will pop these in. Again, I'll put my gloves back on to do the full rinsing effect. Just reusing my gloves, although as we know, these ones probably do need to be recycled after this, or put away after this, because yeah, they do seem to have a hole maybe in one of the fingers. So yeah, it's lost some of its colour, and in fact I do need to get some paper towel as well. Final dry it. Grab that. But it's still kept a really lovely colour on that one. Let's see how this one, a wool, has gone. So that's kept a really intense, but it's got some lovely variation. Can you see it's got some more pinky bits and some more orangey bits, so that's interesting. This is the wool batch, which I thought would be great for my coral reef. And so that doesn't take the colour as much, but again, look, it's got the pinks and the oranges, and I think that's because I've used pink and orange highlighter mixed together in the one dye vat. So that is a thought as well. Like, you could, I might try afterwards, probably not in this video, but mixing like my blue and green together in another little mix and immersing some threads in that. So again, look, it's got the orange and the pink, even though it's the one dye vat that has created that. This one's a nice pinky corally colour. Love that. That's on the white crochet yarn. This one's come out more orangey. So isn't it fascinating? from the one dye. And then this one's got, yeah, pinks and a little bit of pink and then more orangey red, but that's definitely more pinky. So from the one dye vat, you've got all of this variation in colour. And maybe it's even where the heat was, no, I don't think it's where the heat was stronger, although it has come out more orange where the heat seems to have picked it out more. So maybe that's even part of the process of the colours taking, because that's definitely got more orange and pink on it. And look at this one, orange almost into reds. And I did have a couple that were less pinky and more reddy highlighters as well. So possibly this one just sat closer to those in the dye mix. So yeah, once I've done that, I can then just sort of, yeah, give them a final drying. Coming into winter in Australia, although we've had such glorious weather, and today's going to be another beautiful day. I just managed to flick some blue dye into my vinegar bath, so we'll give it a very thorough scrub. So yeah, you can just see the different colours you get from the one lot of dye. And I guess even across the brands of highlighters, you probably get difference in the pigments and paints, and so again it probably depends what they sit near. But yeah, play around with the different fibres and yarns that you've got. So there you go, a palette of colours out of the one dye vat. So I'll put that to the back, give this a quick rolleroo. We can probably iron our blues and greens together. So I'll just give these a good squeeze and then put them over here. And then we'll get a bit more paper towel for our greens. I probably actually don't even need to, no, I'll show you the ironing and those because you're probably curious, aren't you? So again, let's just, so I haven't rinsed with, so this might get a tiny bit of blue on it, but I don't think it will really matter because I don't think the blue will hold because it won't really have the chance to soak into the yarn. So yeah, the wool doesn't hold the colour as much, but it's still pretty nice. Because I guess that wool, I think is raw wool, it's still got that lanolin on it, which probably sort of prevents the dye from fully taking. But yeah, you can definitely get a lot of dyeing out of one little sort of vat of dye. And again, don't use these plastic containers for food again. I'll be writing dye on all of them and keeping them in my little sort of dyeing supplies for future dye experiments, because I do have some other dyes I want to play around with at another time. That's not where my... Okay, so I'll give these a rolleroo. Again, I'll clean up my table back here where I've managed to do some splashing. And we'll just give them an iron. But just look at the difference in colour, even at this stage. Oh no, that's still the yellow from earlier. That's not the green. I thought for a moment the gloves had a hole in exactly the same spot. This down a bit to the centre. Wobbling the camera, it is an outdoor setup, not ideal for filming, but I definitely wouldn't suggest doing this inside just because you do get little splashes and it could stain things. I'm also wearing black for that reason, so that if it splashes off I might get some little fluoro specks, but that would be kind of cool. But yeah, don't wear your fanciest clothes to do a dyeing, would be my advice. So again, you're getting those little bits where it seems to just make the colour come through more intensely, which is interesting. Where the heat sort of applies to it. But yeah, I'm just wanting to make sure I get the heat sort of going everywhere it needs to even get through sort of all of this and get all of this up to high heat. I think that's pretty good. Oh, and I just realised I managed to leave a strand of the pink in my wash before. I'll just quickly pull that out and give that a drying. Where's my pink? It was hiding out in my water. So that's what that. See that one? Yeah, definitely has taken on a more orangey where the heat touched. I wonder if as it sort of fluffs up and dries it will alter it all, or possibly the heat is really making it adhere and come out a different colour. Interesting. Okay, so let's change our water again. So I've just thrown away that bit of water. I'll put a bit more water in here. It's still got a slightly pinky tinge, but it should be fine. And then I'll put all my greens in, and then we can do my blues. Oh, and there you can see some green has put some colour onto the blue, which will be interesting to see if that stays when it washes. Let's just put that in. So the green, you can see, is not putting out as much as, for example, the yellow. Let's squeeze out our greeny pieces, put them on here. So the green, yeah, definitely takes on better than the yellow. And so again, yeah, I think where where I've got the really hot iron, which is possibly yeah, too hot, but it's bringing out some really brighter colours in the pieces. Not so much it's on the wools it does that. Not so much on the crochet yarns, but definitely on the wool. So that's something fun to play around with, because you can then get some good variegation all from the one immersion dyeing. So that is what that looks like, because I'm not worried if my blues take on a bit more of a greeny colour. So I'm going to drop my blues in here and give them a washeroo, and let's see if the yellow that had taken or the green that had picked up on them. Yeah, so it stayed with a little bit of the green, but it's interesting, we've lost a fair bit of our blue off this one, so the blue's not holding as well on that, but on the crochet yarn and this wool it's actually stayed much better. So let's just give that a rolleroo. And again, I'll give these a full rinse after, so I might still lose a little bit more colour, because that's almost gone back to white. So the blue hasn't held at all, but the little bit of yellow, the green that picked up has, and in fact the green looks more like a yellow. So that's a way that if you want something to hold, maybe use green and blue together and you'll actually get something that resembles yellow. Who knows, lots of experimentation to do, but love that colour, that's beautiful. And love this one, which is much more of like a pale blue, but it's got a luminescence almost to it. So this is the one, I wonder if I need to actually put this, no, I'll just use the syringe. I'm not sure how the colour will hold because it has been treated with the vinegar, but then it's been dyed and rinsed and heat set, so not sure. But I'm going to get my syringe and I'm going to pull some yellow out. and put some of that drip, drip, drip on. Use that all up. I can sort of swoosh it around as well to pick up a bit. Then I can, you could obviously rinse between uses, but I'm just going to, and then get some blue as well. And again, I'm not sure how well the colour will hold on this one, but just interested to give it a go. Yeah, I don't suggest mixing the pink in when you're using this technique, because it does tend to go a more sort of murky colour. So I think the blue, green and yellow can go together, but I wouldn't necessarily then add the pink. I think the pink and yellow can go together okay and get that sort of pinky orangey colour. I'll squeeze this one out back into my green, because really blue, yellow, green can go back into green. And you can see you get some lovely merging, and it's quite easy to get the colours to go on that. Let me just give my hands a wipe though before I grab out my other threads. Actually, I'll take my gloves off to get them out of the dye bath, and we'll just give them a drying all at the one time so that they'll be ready for the next two techniques. I'll just clean down our surface here. So what I'm going to do now is just take all my ones out from the vinegar and water dye bath. I'm going to give them a squeeze before I do. And then we'll roll them in, because yeah, I've found that the dye takes best either with the syringing or with the with any of the techniques actually, if you've actually given them a good squeeze and a good drying. In the video that I'll link to below that I first watched, they actually spin theirs in a salad spinner, but again, I don't want to use a salad spinner for something. I suppose at this stage it is only vinegar and water, but still, I just figure a bit of paper towel can do the job, and I'll use the paper towel in the cleanup anyway. Now let me just grab another piece of baking paper to put out completed pieces over. I won't show you the further ironing process because that could get a bit tedious. But I'll just show you the dyeing process from here in. But you'd follow the same process of ironing to heat set, and then rinsing under running water, and then pinning out to dry, ideally in the sun if you can. So these are all now my my pieces that are ready. I can get rid of my vinegar, water and piece of toweling, and I'll put all my bits that we're going to be dyeing over there in the bowl like that. Now let's take one of these ones. Again, I should put my gloves on. And now the lawnmower. I wonder if that's the same neighbour with the lawnmower, or another neighbour maybe. So I'll give my syringe a little bit of a rinse. So just putting some fresh water in it and then doing it. And then let's do a pink. Bring my pink down. Let's do a good amount of pinks because spacker around. And yeah, if it goes through to the surface, you can kind of just rub it around a bit. But you want to make sure it does get through to those other layers. I ended up wrapping quite a few of them this way rather than doing the full making an entire skein, because I think it'll be easier to get the colour in. And then I'll go over to my yellow. I'm not worried if I get a little bit of pink in my yellow. And then I'm just going to drop some of the yellow, which I think will just give us those lovely sort of orangey through to coral accents on it. And again, you can kind of give it a squeeze to sort of make sure it's going all the way through. And then I wonder if I just even give it a little dip into my colour at either end. Just experimenting, I haven't tried this. And just pick a bit more of the yellow up. I think that's going to be really pretty. But again, I'll give it a squeeze out because it will need to be sort of dried somewhat before we iron it. But isn't that lovely? Look at those colours. Let me just give the camera a tap as well and make sure we are staying in focus. So beautiful. I can probably just pick up some of that colour rather than wasting my colours. I'll just use that to dye the next piece. And then, yeah, because I've used the pinky colour, I think I'll just stick to the pink and yellow together. I don't want to put the blue or green in because I think it'll give me murkiness. Again, I can give it a squeeze. And you can see, yeah, this wool doesn't seem to be taking the colour as well as some of the other wools. It's still a nice colour, but it is definitely a little bit more muted. Let's just see if I take up a bit more pink. So you're squeezing it, kind of getting the colour to distribute a bit, but you still want to keep those little patches, or maybe you don't, maybe you want it to all mix through, but I want to kind of have that little bit of variegation still playing out. I think that's lovely. I might even just put a little bit more on this side as well. Mopping up the surface, giving it a little squeezy-roo, and then mopping, and then yeah, I can squeeze anything left back into my pink. And so it's softer, like if you look at just the difference. And so let's get some green. So I like the way you can kind of just, yeah, really easily without scribbling like you would with if you were using the highlighters themselves, which you'll see in a moment. Just get the colour to go around. And I'll get some blue. Some more blue, and then get a bit of yellow. Oops. So these would make lovely gifts for a stitching friend as well. Obviously make sure they're going to be colour fast and the colour's not going to come out, so sort of if you had to reheat set after you've dried, you can do that. Let's give them a squeeze to make sure we're getting colour throughout. Just mop that one up, and then let's just try that dipping into the blue at either end, maybe, or maybe the blue at one end and the yellow at another. So I've done that, then give it a squeeze. Wow, look at that, isn't that great? And you could always take a bit of your dye out into smaller dishes if you wanted to do the dipping and didn't want to worry about kind of cross-contaminating. I think the cross-contaminating is just going to give me interesting colours as I go along. Yellow, let's put that on first. I suppose it doesn't really matter if I'm cleaning the syringe that much. Put some reddy bits on. Oops, got a big bunch of colour there. So I'm just rinsing out so that I'm not making my dyes go too mixed up. So you can already see we're getting quite a murky sort of colour to it. I'll put some green on. And then let's just mix it around, and so you'll even see at this point as I start to mix it all together, it is looking quite murky, but look how much the yellow has disappeared. It's not as strong in there. But let's just quickly do a dip in either end in the yellow, and we'll see if that will stay in the final finish. Because maybe that's the trick. Maybe the yellow stays better when it's over something. I'm not sure. Crochet thread to use for the highlighter experiment. So I'll just use this little one down here. Let's do orange and yellow. I'll just clean my syringe. You can just have a container that you kind of syringe in and out of, and that will probably give you enough of a clean, or you can have clean pure water every time. And then I'll get some yellow. Oops. Again, we could always try giving it a squeeze and then just a little dip in the yellow maybe at one end, just to see if we can get a bit more of sort of the yellow coming in. And again, it's just a really beautiful colour it makes. Not sort of super fluoro, probably not even as fluoro looking necessarily as these, although it's pretty nice. Pretty nice. We'll just dig back in and see if we've got a better one. This one looks quite old on the tip, but it's got some very bright colour. And so in this technique, you can either just sort of colour in strips if you want to make it variegated, or you could colour down the whole thread. Again, I'm using the vinegar treated ones, but let's say we want to do a sort of sections. And you probably want to make sure, I mean, you can leave some of your thread not as intensely coloured, but you want to make sure you're getting your inks enough through to all the layers. That's why if you're making a skein like this, I wouldn't make it too thick, because you might not get all the colour through to the centre. Oops, managed to clip my glove. Again, let's just put that over there. And then if you wanted to come into your more pinks, hopefully I'm into focus, I'll just click. Like that, and then if you wanted to come down, say, to a blue, and then if you wanted to come down to a green, which almost, as we're seeing again, comes out almost like a yellow in some instances. And so again, you can do a bit of a, before you'd iron them, you'd just kind of give them a roll, and that will also hopefully help to just sort of distribute the colours around a bit. But that's what that one looks like. Let me just bring it up to the camera. And so that's colouring where you're doing sort of strips to make a variegated thread. Let me just clean up my desk area a bit. And so then this is where you might want to do stripes of different colours. Can you see we've got Travis? You can't see. Over here, Travis, you want to wave to the camera? There's Travis coming in for a little cuddle and a hello to his fans. Travis says hello to his lovely fans, because lots of people send Travis regards on my videos, which you appreciate, don't you, Travis? That you've got people all over the world that think of you. He was very excited today because he got to have breakfast with us for Mother's Day. So he got a bonus breakfast, didn't you, Travis? So yeah, that one's not putting out awesome colours, so I might need to, and I don't think you'll get as much colour out of them if you do this technique. I mean, you might have to kind of give it a break and let them sort of re-ink on the surface of the sort of the nib to get more out. But obviously in this other method of extracting it, you're getting a lot more colour because you're taking all the colour out of it. I think there's a method also where you use alcohol to extract out some further colour, but I think we're getting a pretty good amount of colour with this method. Let's put some blues on. See, the blue goes on quite pigmented here, but that was the one that washed out on the other wool, which might be a wool synthetic, I'm not sure. And then, yeah, you could just keep it, again, if you don't want it to risk going murky, maybe don't put your oranges and pinks in, but just showing you what it looks like if you kind of do a multi-coloured one. Again, let's just give it a roll in our paper towel and a squeeze, and then that's what that one looks like unicorns. I don't know why that makes me think of unicorns, but it does. Let's show on a wool then. definitely takes more time when you're doing this one because you've kind of got to get to all the fibres if you do want it all coloured up. So we'll sort of do a variegated one here, doing it in sort of stripes, I think. Yellow into orange. And so these ones that are sort of running out at the tips, and as I say, these are many years old from my studies. I can always later on crack them open and create a later dye lot with them. I've got to get to working on my coral reef. I've started on my octopus because it's my Octopus Garden for the Beatlemania exhibition coming up with my art group. We've all selected Beatles songs, and mine's Octopus Garden. So yeah, started my gold work octopus last night, so I'll share that in another video as well. And let's just add a tiny bit more yellow. So that's what that one looks like. Again, let's just give it a little squeeze in the paper towel. It's pretty though. And I think, yeah, wringing out the thread definitely helps. One like this, do green maybe. Green and blue and yellow, and maybe we'll just kind of swipe it a bit more randomly through. It's even picked up some pink there, but that's okay. Some of this I'll be able to use in my coral reef, I think, actually. Probably doesn't even matter if it's kind of got more, because you can see some bits are taking on that really vivid green, and then some bits are more taking on a sort of a more pale, softer green, which is interesting. Put some yellow into the mix. Just tap to make sure we're staying somewhat in focus, although we do probably keep changing our focus. And then add some blue. Oops. Now let's see what happens if I just then put a little bit of, I'm going to just dip it into the yellow just for a bit of something a bit different. Squeeze it out. That's a good way, then it can keep some of its colouring that we've done, and then put some yellow over the top. And let's see if, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, which I'll have to do post video, how the yellow sort of stays when it's gone over the top of other colours. And in fact, we can probably just dip it the middle a little bit into the blue, although I think I've done the entire section actually. Let's give it a squeeze. So we've got yellow tips and a nice bluey, greeny sort of centre. So it's quite nice actually, where you can colour it up with your textures and then dip it in if you've actually got both mixes. Definitely much quicker when you're dipping it in. I may as well, while I've got this on here, just use that to colour another bit. So that's another idea, just mopping up your surface with your walls. That's a lovely colour, isn't it? And again, I might just dip a little corner of that into the yellow. And maybe the other end as well, for fun. And again, not sure how much of the yellow will stay in the finished, but yeah, it's interesting to put it over the top. I'll grab another bit of the wool and just do a mopping, because you've probably seen enough of the highlighting effect. So yeah, either doing bands, you could do a whole piece in a whole colour, but I think the benefit of the highlighting one is you can sort of have variegation quite easily and have them quite distinct as well. So it's just a nice colour to have. Squeeze it out. I'll probably clean that batch up. And then, yeah, I'll probably end up finishing off my Other ones, yeah, probably using my dye batches because I'm pretty happy with the effect I get from those ones. Okay, so I've come back at the end of the day to give you a look at my finished colours across the pieces we dyed together, plus the pieces I had already dyed. I've popped them in this lovely little container that I actually picked up on someone's hard rubbish collection, but I think it's super sweet. It's got a little heart and it's a little tray, and it's great for putting projects or little collections of goodies like this in. So I will grab out all the greens first so we can have a look at them. We won't go into them in detail, but I'll just show you the variety of colours across the blues. As we know, they tend to wash out a bit more. The yellows are harder to get the yellow to stick, but they will stick to some things. And interestingly, the yellow will sometimes stick over the surface of where you've then had other colours that wash out. So I'm going to play a bit more with that, because look at these. The yellow has stuck there. We've got some yellow stuck on parts of this. But then some of them are still quite quite undyed. So I think we'll go back and play some more with these ones that aren't particularly holding their colour. Like there's a little bit there. The mosquitoes are already out. It's just coming into dusk here and they're already out trying to have a nibble of me, even though I put some insect repellent on. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful colours. Lovely. The great thing with this dyeing is that it doesn't make them stiff or anything, so they still feel really, really lovely. They've got no particular smell to them, which is nice as well, and nothing's coming off on my fingers, which is really good. So that's just a quick look at the yellows and the greens and the blues. So I'll pop those back into the container, and then a look at the oranges. Go away, little mosquito, don't try and eat my head. I love, 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 love these colours. And I just love that from one single dye bath, remember I had the orange and sort of pinks mixed together. Look at all the variation in colour. Granted, some of this also has the yellow mixed into it. But I just think that's a really rich array of colours to achieve from a single dye bath, as it were, plus, as I say, a bit of yellow. And I love how the yellow, yeah, it definitely works better over the top where you've already got colours on there. And then these were some of the variegated ones that we've done together, and so I think one of them would be from yesterday as well, which I've done with the highlighter itself. And then these ones too. So yeah, lovely colour mixes in that. But just look how vibrant that is. I'm trying to remember how I did that one. I think that was one that I'd put into the dye bath, but I can't quite remember now. This was definitely one we were working on today where the orange really came out where we were ironing it. So again, I'm going to have a further play, but just look how vivid that is. How fabulous. This one's got a bit of grass because I had them hanging out on my big rack and a couple fell onto the grass. So yeah, I won't keep you any longer, but thanks so much for watching this video. I thought you would love to come back and just see how they dry up. And they had an extra heat treatment because the sun was shining brightly today. And what a fun batch of new threads from old threads and fibres that I've got to play with and use in my stitching. And I think some of these are going to be absolutely fabulous on my coral reef. And then some will go back into the dye, and I've kept the dyes, so I'll do some more dyeing the next time I get a chance. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Have wonderful creative times yourself, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.